Welcome to Match Point number 9, a Tennis Bets podcast. I'm one of two co-hosts here, David E.J. Berger. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts. You can find our show handle at MP9 Tennis on X and all the socials. If you're a first-time listener, chances are how you found us. If you're a returning listener, a returning champion, welcome back. I am based in California. I'm tossing it to my main man in Canada, Mr. John Reed. You can find him at Joe Tweets Tennis. He has been content for his own brand Tidbits Tennis. He writes for Betting Expert, formerly with Action Network and Tennis Forum. John, we are deep into this Grand Slam, and it's felt like a Grand Slam, I feel. We've had a lot of action, a lot of variance, storylines. I feel satisfied early on here. What's your thoughts on AO round 1, as we're about to talk round 2? Welcome in.
Well, I guess I can't complain too much. Had a great day 1, had terrible days 2 and 3. All my challenger stuff is pretty much evened out in the last 2 days, so I can look at it and say I'm down about a unit and a half, which sucks. But such is life. Zizou Bergs was a big play for me on the first set -1.5, and he choked it to one of the worst hardcourt players in the top 100. And I knew that at best of 5, coming off a long week, it was going to be dangerous from the outright perspective. And I was right on that. And I had my analysis correct for Betting Expert. And naturally, of course, he chokes the kind of one market where I trusted him. And, he's the next Shapovalov and Auger-Aliassime, the kid. And honestly, guys like Bergs, watching guys like Bergs, Shapovalov, like these guys make me appreciate the Sinners and Alcarazes of the world even more, because they're the ones that have all the talent in the world, but they actually week in, week out. I know they're freaks in their own ways, but there are a lot of guys who have top 10 talent. There can only be 10. And it means you have to be consistent and sustained. And Zizou Bergs will never get there. He will never be a top 10 player. And that's kind of the solace I take from the fact that he's a choke artist.
Diaz Acosta took me putting him on the sell list personally, apparently. Good week last week, and gets the round 1 win here. All right, John, we're about to talk round 2. Before we do, let's talk about what we talked about last time for our round 1 best bets here. And what did we win? What did we learn? Wins. Otto Viertnen, over 3.5, over 34.5. Cash both. Thank you, Otto, against Archer Feast. I mentioned on the subscriber-only solo pod, I was getting a little sweaty, and he was on serve for the second set. I'm like, if we lose this over because Britain wins in 3, I will be livid. But thank you, Archer, for writing the ship. John, you gave out a dog bomb as your first best bet on our round 1 pod. Guess what? No sweat winner. Pew, 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 pew. Take a victory lap on Habib here, John.
Gotta love Hadi. I think that was more. It was as much of a buffet, honestly, than it was backing Habib. They're very similar players, man. They're big hitters. They're a little inconsistent. It's actually Habib who's worked on that more in recent months. And ultimately, I said either here or on Patreon that it comes down to the fact that there's 2 ways to kind of get on people's radars: be powerful and hit your spots for 2 weeks and turn some heads like Boo did, or work like Hadi has and turn some heads be more controlled with your aggression and start to rack up wins more consistently. And that's the more sustainable style. And I'm glad he won, for tennis's sake. And yes, of course, for my own money's sake. I also had -1.5 sets there personally. So that Hadi saved my round. I'll put it that way. Like without Hadi Habib, I had a full unit on +1.5 sets, a full unit on the money line, and a half unit on -1.5 sets. And I said I lost a little bit during the round. So imagine what would have happened had I not had those big plus numbers come in for me. I'm a big Hadi Habib fan moving forward.
Yes, Hadi Habib cashes it over +200 for John. That was Victory Lap, sponsored by Kumho Tire. Vroom. I wish that was a real thing. I talked Franz Rondelot in the Moneyline Rollover section of our tournament preview show. He cashes in straight sets against Bublik, who continues to flail. Tanasi Kokonakis, we said, don't be scared to lose bet. Well, guess what? You won. John, you talked Nico Basilashvili in some form against Jakub Mensik. He gets the over 3.5 here. Was competitive for stretches.
I think he was a better player for most of that third set. Once he lost that, though, the way he did, losing several great games in a row fairly quickly, like the fourth set was, who's a goner. And it's unfortunate because he wins that set and it's a profitable match for me, right? And he couldn't quite keep his head on straight at the end of the set, and it cost him. And the 1.5 sets went down, and that's unfortunate. But the over 3.5 sets came in. Moneyline loses. Unfortunate stuff there. Would have liked that 1.5 sets. But again, that's another one where, as much as Habib helped keep you afloat, if I can get Basel, who did look ultra competitive just to win 2 sets. The first round looks a little different. So I'm pretty happy with the way the round went overall, even if the results. The one thing I've learned in the last 2 years, I think I've been preaching for 5, but really just learned in the last 2 is not to be results oriented, to look at the analysis, appreciate the fact that it was pretty much accurate most of the time. There were some really bad matches, of course, it's going to happen. And to continue on.
Archer Cazaux, speaking of process, comes through in the end to cover the 4.5 for us, but loses the minus 1.5 sets bet. Cazaux won the first set up 5-4, 40-15 in the second set. Out of nowhere, chokes it, loses the third set, but still got to win if you play the games there. John also got a backdoor cover with Opelka over Onklin.
Yeah, see, there was some good fortune in that first round, too. I feel like in our show, there was a lot of good fortune. So I'll take it. I'll take the kind of wider audience getting some lucky wins, which is nice if people tailed, but it wasn't all roses for me in that first round. Thank you, Jordan Thompson.
Well, speaking of not all roses, Opelka broken twice to lose the ladder in set 1. That's really how I drew that one up. Faria cashes for me. Sorry, Kotov for John. Thiago Vilch, how do you say this guy's name? 5-all in the 5th set, man, at plus 200. Just get to the super breaker. Of course not. We've pivoted to the losses. That was brutal. How about 2 brutal ones on my set 1 moneyline tips? Gigante up 5-4 on serve in the first set breaker. Doesn't win another point. How about another 5-7 loss with Mannarino to Khacanov? Mannarino was also up 4-2 in that set. Choked it. Woof. Wawrinka, we talked set 1 money line. Of course, he wins the second set.
I feel bad for Stan, man. He's so damn competitive at his age, and he's still got so much power. A lot of that coming, deriving from technique and your hips and your leg. He's still got it in his legs, man. I know we've seen him wear down before. That's going to happen. You're not always going to have it deep into matches, deep into a season, especially. But he said he's not retiring. He thinks he can keep going, and he showed it at least. Man, several 5-7 sets lost. A couple 5-7 sets were lost. That's nothing to hang your head over against a big server like Sonego on a quick court. I'm impressed by Stan the man. He showed me something. The coaches, coach speak, showed me something out there.
He's still got that dog in him. And then my moneyline rollover, guys, Koboli up a set, doesn't win another set. Greek Sport just doesn't show up for us. 3-0 loss to Hercash. Terrible, actually. That was awful. And Arnaldi, really competitive with Musetti. Loses 2 breakers. Can't get one of those breakers? God. Musetti was the better player in the end. Did generate 28 break points to Arnaldi's 16. But Arnaldi was right there toe-to-toe with him. He also closed. Well, he opened plus 160. I tipped around plus 145, 150. Closed closer to plus 120?
Yeah, no, he ended up getting back to plus 140, but he was down to plus 127, I think, at one point. That's when I came in and played Musetti. I ended up getting a push there, but this shows you the price sensitivity. I said I didn't mind the number that you had snagged, right? But I still played against once it moved so drastic. And this is where, people need to get out of the mindset of I made a good bet because it won. I think DB made a fine bet at plus 163-ish. I think I made a fine bet when it got down to minus 140, 45-ish, or minus 150, I think. Whatever 1.66 is on the Musetti side. I have no problem with either of those bets. We go 0-1-1. That's fine. I didn't say it on the show, obviously, because it hadn't gone down that much yet by the time we released. But this shows you that there's a number to play both sides at, or there's a number where both sides can be value in the same match. Now, it's not often you see both sides end up at their respective numbers, but it's possible. And this kind of illustrated it. So I'm actually glad this match happened. Win or lose for the pod, it's a good moment to talk about price sensitivity. It's a good moment to talk about probabilities and likelihoods rather than, and I know that there's fairly somewhat big account out there who's like probabilities and likelihoods, they're all frauds, whatever. If you're not thinking in probabilities, you're doing it wrong in betting, period. I don't care how much success you've had. Odds are literally mathematically correlated to a probability of winning. That's legitimately what they're there for. So this match kind of illustrated it.
Kind of how it works.
Yeah, a little bit.
Speaking of price sensitivity, I mentioned on our round 1 best bet show, I was okay just letting the Fonseca-Rublev match pass. Of course, I played it at minus 140. I think you got minus 137 on Pinnacle. Yeah. Rublev doesn't even win a set. I haven't seen any of it yet because it was overnight here on the West Coast, and we're just getting going early my time. I just got my family out the door as we record. Looking at the numbers, I mean, I feel like a little unlucky for Rublev. Fonseca, obviously a great player, but nothing atrocious. Lost a couple coin flip breakers here.
You know what? I think the takeaway from this match, though, is he is here. I said I wanted to, I still think the market was wrong to price him up that much the way they did, because we hadn't seen him play as a top 20 or 25 player yet, and he was priced that way, right? If you're barely a dog to a top 10, let's put ranking aside and do power ratings, top 15 at worst. guy whose specialty is on quicker hard courts, right? You are basically being priced up as a top 20 player yourself or top 25 player, right? That's what those odds, 1.72, would indicate. That's what those percentages would indicate. And I don't think Fonseca had proven enough to earn that moniker yet. I said, I don't mind losing money. Again, don't be afraid to lose bets, guys. I don't mind losing money to take a stand there. I lose money and I see Fonseca do what he did. One, not just win in straight sets. More importantly, stay competitive start to finish in a best of 5 format. Okay, boom, there it is. Power rating changed. I'm not going to be fading him as much going forward. He is probably at this moment top 25 in talent or on court in the world. There it is. I lost one bet to get me there, but the people who won their bets simply, good job. But I don't know how you could rationalize a top basically 25 rating or top 20 rating on him prior to that match happening. I think you can do it now. I don't think you could. One match shouldn't change that much, but I think with kind of phenoms like this, you kind of have to, you don't want to be too far behind the curve. Like, I don't mind losing one bet. I don't want to lose 6 bets fading this kid while he just bursts into the top 10 and be like, oh yeah, he is that good. I think it's understood now, but I don't love the pre-match pricing still.
You also have to wonder, everyone's obviously like, I knew it, Fonseca over Rublev, I'm a genius. You do have to wonder, though, it's 5-5 in the third set breaker. That goes another way. We get into a fourth set. Does Fonseca get over the line in the 5-set format? I think he's obviously a great player. I think getting through in 3 was a great pathway for him to win this match, and he did that. And I think you want to react appropriately, not overreact.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing too, is what is the appropriate reaction? And you can make a case it is to instantly price him. I don't know if minus 400 is the right price against Sonego. But put it this way, I'm not betting Lorenzo Sonego against Joao Fonseca, even at a plus 300 number. I want no part of that backhand exchange. Like, we'll get into it.
Yeah, hell no. I no. Sonego is banned. I'm only fading him from now on. Even if I did lose with Stan in the first set, he did lose the second set, of course, but whatever. Anyway, all right, John, let's get into it with round 2 here. I want to start off with the Jordan Thompson Nuno Borges match. Nuno MF and Borges, my boy. However, actually now it's moved a little bit, but Borges was around plus 120. And he was just at minus 105. Now he's even here on Bovada. 1 game spread. Minus 120 here for Thompson. 39 total. These guys have played twice before. Borges leading 2-0. He burned me. You got the win last week. And he really cucked me, if you will, when I said he wins matches. But the head-to-head here, he does win matches. He's 2-0, like I said. But that was a couple years ago. One was on grass, which actually surprised me that Borges has a grass win over Thompson, who's a great grass player. He won one of the challengers in the run-up to Wimbledon in 2022, 6-4, 5-7. He also won in 2021 in Estoril on clay. That's a home tournament for Borges. And Thompson's not a clay guy, so I kind of tossed that one out. What's interesting, though, John, 2022, I feel like both of these players have jumped leaps and bounds from their 2022 form. Thompson, especially. Both these guys.
Yeah, no, I'd say both. Attacking game-wise, man, both these guys have worked hard on their serves, have worked hard on their forehands. Borges will grind you down, will make things physical. Make no mistake, his service game in these conditions is just fine. It's not going to hang with the big boys at the top of the game, but it's going to hang with a lot of good players.
Yeah, but now, John, we're getting Jordan Thompson, who I like, I respect. Near pick on John Kane. Borges, I'm usually a Borges guy, but now that we're getting closer to pick here, I'm willing to take a shot here with the Australian playing at home, the crowd behind him. Dude, the atmosphere for the Rinky Hijikata match last night was insane on court 3. I can only imagine what it's going to be like tonight with Thompson on John Kane. I don't want to go down narrative like crowd backing should really factor into your handicap, but like, dude, I mean, the energy for this guy is, I think, actually will be a factor.
Yeah, they've decided, by the way, I'm going to leap ahead here on the order of play to make the John Kane ticketed for night, day, and night session. We talked about this on the preview pod. Shout out Ace Previews for that information prior to the tournament. It doesn't appear that it's affected the John Kane kind of atmosphere, which is great to see. Tournament makes money. People are still rowdy. To me, that's a win-win. Sorry if people don't like, oh, the fans get screwed. Okay, screw you. You don't know how to run a business. You don't know what you're doing. Shut up. Anyway. Back to the match. Yeah, look, Tomo has had injury concerns. That's why you saw Cupford take money, despite the fact that he hadn't been good since May. And he ended up covering, but Thompson had match point to cover. I know this because I bet on Thompson. And it was ugly after 3, but he came back and had a chance to win the fourth 6-1. Again, Cupford not really showing much of anything since May. Kind of letting that seep into the match. Thompson ends up broken. Wins at 6-3 instead, doesn't cover. Lovely stuff. Love when that happens. But he had a foot concern. And appeared early on like he could not. You could hear Marinko Matosevic's coach. I heard it anyway on the stream talking about, they had an injection in his foot. So this is probably why Nuno's taking money. I think by the end of the match, Thompson looked much better movement-wise, though. And so it clearly worked. He's had another day off. You wonder if, they get that injection in prior to the match or earlier in the match. So he's better right from the get-go. If that is kind of lesser of a concern, and if the market hasn't overreacted moving Borges from 40% to win to 50% to win, it's a 10% jump. That's a big move based on kind of injury rumors that settled as time went on rather than getting worse as time went on in the opening match. I kind of like Thompson here. I don't think it can be a big bet because it's another best of 5 match, but like Nuno is a physical guy. We know this, but at some point this tennis is going to add up. Like he played a physical match last round against Muller, right? He played 4 3-setters in Auckland. 3 of those 3-setters went to 7-5 or 7-6 in that deciding set. I'm starting to get concerned about Nuno physically now too, and I think the market is looking so much at Thompson's foot and not really understanding that Thompson it wasn't like he was hampered and in pain on court. They actually kind of got it under control, and then he pulled away from Cup. And if he's going to be okay on court, it's not as likely he's going to tire out as the match goes on. And he has no problem making things physical. And he's one of the only players that I'm never concerned about in the heat. In fact, he goes the other way. We downgrade Jack Draper a little bit in hot, humid conditions. Not so much in round 2 here because, again, it's going to be a night match. But like Thompson is someone you upgrade because almost every other opponent is more likely to break down physically sooner than he is. Now, Nuno, with rest and without a lot of tennis in his legs, would not be someone that I would consider to break down even against Thompson. But I'm starting to get concerned that the market's just overlooking how much tennis he's played in his own right. And I think I have to have a play on Thompson at -115. Although, like I said, I don't think it's going to be anything major.
I mean, I was happy to let this pass when he was more of a favorite, but if we're going to come down to pick, I will take the Australian at home here. I think this is a pretty close matchup, and I will actually give him the slight edge. And also, John, we're going to talk about injury stuff if you want to get into that real quick. Because, man, the first round, people really were buying into retirements going in, and I think overall, those narratives did not pan out.
Yeah, I don't want to shout out Tennis Master for a good discussion on the timeline as well. Like, it wasn't personally attacking. It was good discussion back and forth. And ultimately, with the first round stuff and injuries, try to make it clear that you do want to have it in the back of your mind, but you don't want to react to it to the extent the market did, or there becomes a point where there's an overreaction. And if you think about it logically, here's the deal. One, they don't end up losing prize money unless they're clearly hurt and barely play through the match. Then they can be fined by the Australian Open or Tennis Australia, whoever's in charge. That possibility is there. But the second thing, more importantly, is even if they lost 50% of their prize money for retiring, as they do if they withdraw, that's the incentive to withdraw, is you still get 50% and you won't be fined if you take the court 2 injured. Let's consider how many players, and this is from a logical point of view, how many players would go out there to play for the extra, 65, 70,000? It doesn't make any sense. The vast majority of the top 75 guys would not risk hurting their entire season and missing chunks of the calendar to play for that amount of money. It is a lot of money to some players, but a lot of the guys, like Riley Opelka, was he really going to play for 70 grand? Do you think Riley desperately needs that money? No, not in my mind. So if you kind of create a Venn diagram of players who were entered potentially injured, and the other circle is players who desperately need the money, how many were in that middle segment where it overlaps? I can't think of that many. You know what I mean? So I understand you want to handicap, but if they're going to take the court, chances are they're going to be somewhat okay, right?
Yeah.
There's just not enough guys that are injured and that are both injured entering the tournament and desperately need that extra 65K. And the worst part is there's a chance they don't even get that 65K anyway if they come in too injured and get fined. So again, it's more incentive for them to withdraw. And that first 65 or whatever the prize money is divided in half would still be a good incentive for them. There's a lot of risk by going out on court injured. Like seriously injured. There's not a lot of reward for the vast majority of players in the main draw because most of them don't desperately need that added bonus money. So that's what I mean is think about that work through it logically like that. And it's not the biggest of concerns to me. It is a concern, but I don't take it as clearly as seriously as most of the market. And that's where I approach it from, right? Have it in the back of your mind, but don't be shifting percentages like 10, 12 percentage points based on that one factor. There's other factors that you're just neglecting at that point when you do that. So my point was more about the market, not necessarily being gung-ho about, screw injuries. bet every guy that's hurt. Like, that wasn't my point.
John, I'm going to follow up your eloquent, well put take there with my own rational thought process on this. Is these guys are all liars. I don't believe them. If they're out there and playing, just play them. Way too many instances of guys acting like they were hurt before, then they're totally fine. That's the majority of the time in my mind. Dude, these guys are fucking liars. Period. Yeah. Do with that what you will. And I'll tell you about my origin story for that villain take is the Indian Wells 2022 final with Taylor Fritz, who acted like he was near death before the match.
Oh, God, against Nadal?
Yes.
Oh, the Netflix series and the ankle. Oh, my God, yeah.
After that, I've taken zero stock in injury stuff going into matches, and it served me pretty well. I mean, how did that Holly's fade go, everyone? Great job.
Right, that's what I mean, right? So let's keep that in mind for round 2 is for the second round as well. Guys that took MTOs, a lot of that time that can be cosmetic, tactical, and not serious deep injuries. So again, keep these in the back of your minds. Don't over handicap the MTOs. Maybe go, if you have access to the video on demand, maybe go back and watch to see what the MTO was for, were they in serious pain, but let's not overly Alto Cazaux is another one, by the way, that Baez got steamed to shit. And what happened? It was actually the 4th and 5th sets where Cazaux took over. The deeper that match got, the more he took over, which you never would expect if he was so hurt coming in. You'd have expected him to fade in those sets, right? There's just Opelka, Cazaux, Halis. There's a lot of evidence that, the market really got the injury stuff wrong, the way they priced it up.
All right, well, let's keep it moving here. John, I know you're going to do the unthinkable here, and that's bet on Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, who's taking on Felix FAA here. The Canadian is minus 325 here on the money line. Fokina plus 260, 5-game spread, 37 total here.
This is almost like the Boo and Hadi Habib thing. Like, yes, Felix is better. Yes, he's proven more, but he is still a guy who is incredibly error prone. And I'm not a trends guy unless you can justify why the trend is occurring. And in this case, look at all the close matches he's played. Even this year, he won 4 matches to win the Adelaide title. He won 1 match at the United Cup. He lost a match at the United Cup, and he played his first round match. And he's won 1 match in straight sets, and that was against Marcos Giron. And if you recall, I had a bet with I had Felix in that match, and I really feel like I got lucky in that first set to win it, right? Like, Giron was the better player in that first set. Felix cannot put together entire matches of consistent play. Neither can Alejandro. But again, this is like the Vietnam Fields handicap as well, or the Hadi Habib and Buyun Chokere match. This is where you've got a rather large favorite. By the way, Vietnam's another one who is had injury concerns on his Instagram. That didn't turn out to be true. He looked just fine. That's like 6 for 6. I'm sure there were some that did look bad coming in injured. But anyway, back to the match. Look, the fact is, I do think Felix is the favorite. I'm not impassioned about this. You know my feelings on Alejandro Davidovich Fokina. Him and Zizou Bergs are right-handed Denis Shapovalovs. I'm not keen to bet them. But, and I never will as favorites, unless they're like, minus 115 against an ITF player, which will never happen, but I never say never. But you know what I mean? Like, I don't back these guys generally as favorites. But when they're going to be plus 260 against Felix, who, I'm going to be honest with you, his 6-1 record is I'm not as impressed as most probably are. I thought he looked bad for long stretches against Fritz. He choked a dominant 6-love, 2-love lead against Borna Coric, who was terrible against Christian Garin last night, and who's been terrible for the better part of a year and a half now. And then he's, even in Adelaide, he didn't look that convincing to me. Most of his matches, he dominates Struff for like 2 sets and drops a set in between them. He's a really tough player to get a handle on, and he's someone that I do think is prone to too many bouts of inconsistency. And so when you're going to give me minus 140-ish, minus 143, as I got last night, I'm not sure where it is right now. I'll have to pull that up. But for over 3.5 sets, I'm going to take it. I've also obviously added, sprinkled on other markets as well for Davidovich Fokina. It's up to plus 275 on the money line now. So the over 3.5 sets is now minus 140. So, I mean, a few pennies better there. I like that bet. Like, if I lose 3-0 with Davidovich Fokina, fine. If he wins 3-0, I'm going to be sprinkling on the money line. So do you trust Felix? Like, the thing is, he's had a tough time playing entire matches at his best level in best of 3, in the best of 3 format. Do you really trust him in a best of 5 set format where he's got to win an extra set to do it in straights? I'm not even close to being at that point. And I also get the benefit of the underdog redlining for 40 minutes gives me the set in that regard too. I don't even need Felix to play horribly. I can get David Fokina to play steadily, probably for less time than Felix, but it's still possible. We know his top level is, top 20, top 25 kind of talent. So I've got talent on my side. I've got the ability to redline to steal a set. I've got an unreliable favorite at a huge number who's more than capable of giving away sets. He's done it all season. It's a short season, but he's already given away sets 2, 3, 4 times. We're in the second or third week. We're in the second week of January. Third week, I guess. I don't see why you wouldn't bet David Fokina here, other than it's David Fokina and Felix, and I don't need to go near that trash can. I guess I'd understand that, but I think there's value to be had.
I like your over 3.5 sets angle. You can still get minus 150 on Bet Online. It's up to minus 165 on Bovada. I think that should be like minus 200. That's what the over 3.5 is for Kokkinakis Draper. I think we should be more in that territory. So I think there is some value there. My other thing, though, is Davidovich Fokina will be in the lead and will have a chance to win a set. The problem
is, will get
broken. Will he close out?
It's okay. I don't get mad at those things in our group chat anymore, do I?
Like him being in a position to win is a lock.
Oh gosh, him actually closing the set.
Whether or not he closes, that's TBD. Are you back on your boy Hadi Habib here in some way against Humbert? I mean, the pricing is quite nice. Plus 675 here on the money line for Habib. Humbert, I guess, is Djokovic at minus 1100. 6.5 game spread here. 34.5 total. I mentioned Humbert almost dropped the first set. I'm not going to say lucky. He rose up and snatched that set. Gigante didn't even get a set point from 5-4 on serve, but still, Humbert, I feel like, looks really good for stretches, and then randomly out of nowhere, he loses a set.
Right. So I want to transition and take over here then, because this is my exact point, and this is another thing that's a bit of a trend, but it makes sense. And when you can rationalize and understand why it exists, it may actually be actionable, right? It may be actual information to bet on. And this is something that I wanted to go back to, I think, after Wimbledon. His losses have come as to dogs of plus 235, the Olympics, not tour, not main tour, but again, 3 sets. Gets Cedundolo, Borges plus 225, Thompson plus 155, Comesaña plus 640. Fils was a dog to him as well. Monfils was over plus 200. Goffin was over plus 200. Zverev was the favorite, obviously. And then this year he's lost to Kobeli, who was over plus 200. And Stricker was 1 hold from going to a third set at plus 300. So first of all, he drops a lot of sets. Second of all, he is clear. He's been overvalued for quite some time in a lot of matches against talented players. Now, why is it that he drops so many of these matches? Quite frankly, because of his style. Right? That lower net clearance. That's why this tournament, the quicker courts tend to help him. The longer a point goes, the more likely that lower net clearance is going to clip the tape and land on his side of the net. It's going to increase his error count. That's going to increase the pressure on him in his service games, most likely, or make it tough for him to generate as much pressure on return. And he just doesn't have a style that lends itself to Alcaraz or Sinner type runs where they're at the semifinals of every tournament they play. And to me, that's the big issue here. We saw this against Comesaña. It's not that Comesaña is the greatest thing since sliced bread. He's better than people realize. There's another one. My biggest bet of the first round on the men's side, going down in a 5th set. Some things went my way, some things just didn't in the opening round. So I guess almost break even. Slight loss is something I've got to be okay with. But Humbert is a guy who, if you can make enough balls, he can beat himself at times. And so for me, I think Hadi has to be a play. Huge serve in his own right. He's had, I think Edge AI tweeted out the last 15 matches he's played or something. He's had at least 15 aces in 8 straight matches or something. The guy's got a monster serve for these courts. I still really like his second serve. And I think, Humbert is a guy, in that Felix camp, in that Yun Chao-Kete camp, in this camp of favorites that just plays a pretty high risk, high reward style, and trusting him to dominate, win every set is going to be tough. He had a great matchup last round against Gigante. And I'm a Matteo fan. I backed him throughout qualies. And I made money on him several times in qualifying. But in my mind, that was a horrible matchup for Gigante. And yet, you still almost cashed the first set money line, right? Humbert can take favorable matchups and turn them into competitive affairs. I don't even know if this is as favorable. Yes, he's got the lefty forehand into the Habib backhand, but Habib can go at his backhand as well with his serve and forehand and generate cheaper points that way. Whereas Gigante, cross-court exchanges lefty to lefty, there was just no advantage for either other than Humbert, who's much better with timing on these kind of quicker courts. And yet, Habib is actually a bigger price than Gigante. And this is where a lot of the data guys, I think, need to start adding more matchup to their. Now, this could end up 2-2-2. And like I've always said, I don't care if I lose the bets. But to me, Hadi Habib stands a better chance of beating Humbert than Gigante did. And yet his price is high or cheaper. And that's because Hadi Habib hasn't proven as much as Gigante, hasn't won as many challengers, probably doesn't have the same hold points and serve points won over the last 52 weeks. But you have a massive blind spot there because Habib's game since October hasn't been kind of revolutionized or totally changed, but it's evolved and it's not the same. So the data from last February, I'd really caution people to not integrate or use that data to kind of help you price up this match accurately, because Habib has become a little more controlled. David Gertler, who was on with me for the qualifiers chat on my Patreon page, was talking about Habib, and I really wanted to have him on for that reason. He's the one who noticed a lot more control. He was a kind of ball-bashing, error-prone guy that couldn't get himself above the Challenger Tour for that reason. And we're starting to see that change, and I think he's going to have a pretty big year.
You can get Habib to win a set at plus 105 on Bovada. It's even money on BetOnline. What's your best
You know
price?
what might work in this match as well? First set tiebreak props, over 0.5 tiebreak props, over 1.5 tiebreak props is going to be probably a big price. These things as well, I'm going to look at. I haven't bet them myself yet, so that got obviously a little bit of caution there. But I wouldn't be surprised if Hadi kept, even if he loses 3 love, I would not be surprised if he gets a tiebreaker or 7-5 in there. So maybe some set overs or live set overs or those kinds of things could be decent looks as well. All dependent on price, of course.
Plus 255 for the first set breaker. Over 10.5 is plus 185.
Only plus 185 for the 10.5?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe not. I'll check Penny in 365 and see what I can come up with.
All right. Fonseca is a young gun, talk of the town. Here's another young gun. He's not that young. He's 23. Jacob Fearnley bursting onto the scene here with the big win over home country favorite Nick Kyrgios, who claims he's played his last singles match in Melbourne. Big if true. He's taking on Artur Cazaux, who he cashed with in the opening round. Cazaux plus 120 moneyline dog here. Fearnley out to minus 145 as a favorite. 38.5 total here. 1.5 game spread here. If you had talked to me 48 hours ago, I was willing to never play Artur Cazaux for the rest of my life. He was perma-banned, but now they're making him a dog. Cazaux, not like a lot more tour pedigree, but had that nice run at the AO last year. They're giving me plus money. I don't know that I can trust Cazaux after last time, but it does feel like there's value here on the Frenchman, John. What do you think?
I think we're head-to-head. I think we're head-to-head. Look, obviously the market loved Fearnley during his runs last year. I thought he played some decent competition in his challenger runs. He did so mainly in England and Europe, which, as you well know with me, that is a big check mark kind of for him to have won 3 challengers in Europe. Those tend to be tougher fields. Not gonna have a lot of ATP Tour guys in there. I get it, but certainly better than what Lerner Tien did, or even what Tristan Boyer did by going to South America, or what guys do when they go to Asia, where the fields are a little weaker. I certainly give more credence or give more kind of credit to Fearnley than the others. I thought he was competitive on the main tour level, despite coming out of college and playing a lot of tennis during the summer. He still managed to qualify at ATP events here and there. He lost, a match at Talon Griekspoor, which I don't hold against anyone. I think Talon is, yes, better than Cazaux with those kinds of weapons. And the big thing for me is look who he's played this year. Yes, he had a sluggish start against Dellavedova. First match of the year, that might happen. Beats a big server in James Trotter, beats a big server in Chris Eubanks, beats a big server in Nick Kyrgios, and loses his only losses to Joao Fonseca, who is now legitimately not even being hyped as a top 20 guy, who just beat Andrei Rublev on quick courts in straights. This kid is probably top 20 already. I think we need to have a chat about Jacob Fearnley being even better than the market might understand. I wrote this up for Betting Expert. The big thing for me is his serve and forehand may not be as big as Cazaux's, but what he does do better than Alcel Cazaux by a country mile is play intelligent, kind of within himself tennis. And he still has the weapons on quick courts. And to me, that makes a huge difference. You don't love losing to Altmaier and Prismic, but as I said, he played a lot of tennis that summer. It was his first real stretch on the professional circuit. I'm not going to hold those kinds of losses against him too much, and still had wins, Maillot, blocks, Gigante at a challenger, O'Connell on a quick indoor court is decent. I mean, there are still some solid wins littered throughout his resume, and there have been some hiccups. That's understandable. Kid is 23 years old. I think he's actually older than Cazaux. But in his first like full 7-month stretch on the tour. And I like the fact that he's had a few weeks off in the offseason to kind of get his legs back under him after he burst into the top 100. Now let's see how far he can push. I'm a buy on him. I like that. One of the very few bets I made was him to be top 70 year end. And he's got months to rack up points before he has to defend a lot of them in the summer. And so for me, this is kind of like double dipping in a way, because if he wins this match, he would jump to 77th in the world. He'd get himself right on the precipice of the top 70 already. And hopefully if he can win another match here like this one, I think it would set up well for the rest of the year. I think he also has nothing to defend at the US Open, which is nice. But I just think that there's a big difference here between one guy with weapons that played 5 sets against Seba Baez. I don't want to put too much in the back issue against Felix because he played decently in the third set, though. As I said in the preview show before the Baez preview, the serve numbers did come down in that third set. He did manage to keep it close, but the service numbers weren't what you'd expect. And beating Baez in 5 sets is not impressive at all. And it's indicative of why he struggles so much. He throws away service games, throws away sets to guys who are just who are even semi-competent from the baseline in terms of grinding. He didn't look all that great on return for large swaths of that match either. I think you've got a more well-rounded player here in Fearnley, who may not have proven as much on the professional tour, although has Cazaux really racked up the challenger wins himself? He's had one run here, it was 12 months ago. Since that time, remember, he went 5 months winning one match. Cazaux, he beat Borges at Wimbledon in a super tight 5-setter, I think. That, he's had months where he does not win any matches. The kid went to, I think, Asia to get his season back on track, making a final of a nothing burger challenger in Shenzhen. I do not trust Cazaux. I think that the resume actually favors Jacob Fearnley, even though he's only played 6 months on tour. That's crazy to me. But to me, he's already, and he is power rated ahead of Cazaux. He's the favorite here, and he damn well deserves it, if I'm being honest. He's got the more well-rounded game. He's been a lot better of late. I got him at a bigger number or a better price than he is now last night.
What did you get him at? Because you can still get minus 130 on Bet Online.
Okay, well, there you go. Go to Bet Online then. That's where I got him. He was actually at one point overnight minus 118. No, I got him minus 125 at Bet365. And then it dropped, and there was a 180 still at Unibet, but I can't bet that. But I bet it. It dropped while I was writing. Any Europeans or Brits who were able to catch my my article this morning hopefully got the 1.80, because within the market now, he's pretty much between, it's close at Unibet actually. If you're in Europe listening to this, there's still like a minus 130 hanging there, but minus 138 to minus 150 elsewhere. So there has been movement here, and it's the correct movement. I think that Fearnley should absolutely be the favorite.
Fearnley's played 7 tour level matches, but Cazaux only 34. I actually thought he had played more.
Well, you got to win. You got to win one to play a second one at a tournament, and that's been a roadblock for Cazaux.
I mean, you talked me out of Cazaux. Well, one, I don't want the experience I felt the other night. But two, you've made a good case for Fearnley here. I'm probably just gonna pass, because if Cazaux wins, I'll be Googling the nearest bridge. All right. We're going to keep it moving here, but I did release a subscribers only. That's right. We haven't plugged our subscriber only feed yet. For $4.99 a month, you're going to get additional bonus content from John and I. John posted his Challenger check-in yesterday. I gave a 3-pack of plays for round 2. One of them, you're getting some CLV. Moved to half game already. So if you want to check those out, hop on to Spotify and sign up. And I also want to say too, if you don't like Spotify, when you sign up, you get a private RSS feed to use on your favorite podcast platform. So you don't have to be a Spotify person. Just got to go there to sign up. John, looking ahead here, I lost with Koboli to Tomas Martin Etcheverry. Frustrating, have to say. Pretty pissed off about that one. But now I get another shot here to fade Etcheverry. Marcos Giron is minus 120 on the money line versus Etcheverry here. 39 total here. I'm firing up Giron. Am I tilt betting it? Maybe. But I do like the American hardcourt here in quick conditions versus the Etchman. The serve was, as you mentioned, ahead of the Koboli match. The serve was quite the weapon for Etcheverry, though, in that matchup last night. But what do you think about this matchup?
I think you can make worse tilt bets. Put it that way. I'm not in love with the price, but I do. I mean, the thing about Marcos is, I'm a tape study guy. I'm a qualitative guy, and he could be so deceiving because he could be so good on quick courts. I like the way he gets in out of the corners. He's athletic enough to play in the best of 5 set format. His first serve is nice. He's so aggressive on the forehand. There are so many attributes that work well in these conditions. And Etcheverry, it was kind of known a few years back he's got a good serve forehand combo and that he'd be okay on hard courts. And now I think we've gotten to the point that we're power rating him as like a pretty damn good hard quarter. And I just see, again, too many competitive matches, too many matches where I just don't trust him to win at the rate that the market kind of sets his prices at. So, yeah, I'm with you here. I have a 118 at Pinnacle that I think I'm going to play. And I might even play the suckers bet. And don't do this because I've been advised by another expert that minus one and a half sets are suckers bets. Because you know what? Like, it's never value, and there's never any instance under the sun where, you know, the number on 1.5 sets makes any sense. And there's definitely not scenarios where there's players you don't trust to win a fifth set because of their physicality issues. So if they're going to win in 4 or 3 or 4. Thus, you want to increase your kind of odds and increase your payout by attacking the minus 1.5 sets line. That's never a smart strategy. It's always a sucker's bet. Just keep that in mind. So I'm going to be a sucker here. I'm a terrible handicapper, as everyone knows. And I'm going to look towards kind of juicing up my my payout by adding maybe a small bet on Marcos Giron minus 1.5 sets, aka Marcos Giron suckers bet.
Tilt bet, suckers bet. Quite the expert podcast we got going here. I just found my favorite play on the board. Now, we're going to go in the MTO talk because Musetti took multiple MTOs and played a long 4-hour match, his longest match of his entire career, actually, John. They mentioned on the broadcast. Comes through, though, against Arnaldi. I guess that's why he is a dog to Denis Shapovalov. Minus 115 here for Shapo. It's basically pick, but Musetti is minus 105 here. Half game spread, 39 total. I mean, Shapo dropped the first set, wins in 4 against RBA. He's Jekyll and Hyde. On the day, go ahead.
Did we talk about that on the pod?
No.
Or on the first pod?
No.
Okay, because then it was for patrons. Because I did mention that is exactly how I had that match going too. A lot of the time, split the early 2 sets and get a better price on Shapo. I wasn't awake for it. Damn it, they made it. I was hoping they wouldn't make it too late, and they did. So I couldn't capitalize myself because I was sleeping. But God, was that not the most predictable outcome of that match?
Yeah, Shapo looked awesome. Round 1, good. I know a lot of people are like, Zhang was actually the one who stunk, and Shapo wasn't that good. Okay, fine. But I thought he looked pretty good in that opening round match in Adelaide. And then follows that up against Giron with a total dud. Opens with 10 double faults in the first set against Giron in that match. I don't get... I mean, does Shapo have the ability to blow Musetti off the court? Of course. Will he, though? I don't know. I don't know how Musetti's not the favorite here. The guy's been the higher caliber player for quite some time. This is a lot of respect for Shapo's on-paper talent with the guy who can, 1, bleed errors, 2, double fold his way to break points. I mean, this is like, because Musetti took some MTOs and played his longest match ever here. Shapo also lost in pretty routine fashion to Arnaldi, who Musetti just beat.
Yeah, I think if you're going to turn around and look at, you know, Musetti maybe not having the most impressive match against Arnaldi, you'd have to say the same for Shapovalov against an aging player that's obviously not nearly the level at this stage of his career as Matteo Arnaldi, right? Neither of these guys was particularly impressive. And I think that's one thing you want to look out for is when you're going to do these handicaps, if you like a side, that's fine, but don't cherry pick one side saying, you know, I wasn't impressed with Musetti's first round. Well, if you're betting on Shapo, you're telling me you're impressed with that first round? Winning in 4, needing a 4th set tiebreak against an aging Bautista Agut, who should be losing a step by that 4th set. Not necessarily looking exhausted, but losing a step. I mean, it's just, I'm not there on Shapovalov against anyone that's relatively consistent or against any righty with a decent backhand. And Musetti somehow might have one of the better one-handed backhands out there. I don't think it's terrific. I don't think it's superb. But just by default, some of the other one-handed backhands are so atrocious that I think he's probably got one of the more reliable ones. I don't think he minds pace. I think he can take it line pretty nicely, which puts it, you know, Shapovalov in the awkward spot of having to, 1, get to that corner to cover it, and 2, hitting a defensive backhand himself that can seize control of rallies. I think there's a few matchup things I like here from Musetti. Obviously, the solidity from the baseline relative to Shapo is another one. The serve has improved on quicker surfaces in the last year. I don't understand why Shapo gets this kind of respect. Like, he's monster favorites. Or he's a monster favorite against Nishikori. Not monster, but he's a pretty not a monster favorite. I mean, it's sizable favorite against Nishikori. Sizable favorite against Zhang. Sizable favorite against Giron. He goes 1-2 in those matches. Monster favorite against Bautista Agut. He barely wins in a 4th set tiebreak, 10-8 to seal it up. Why does the market love this guy so much? He's won 1 title in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and it was late in the season when no one's playing at a 250. In fact, both of his titles in his career have been late season 250s where fields are weak. Why do we keep giving him the credit like he is a top 25 player? I don't understand it. He hasn't proven anything. Is his data really that nice? Does his data look that good? And if you are basing this on like Shapovalov's pricing purely on data, I'd give your head a shake because watch him on court. He's not a top 25 guy, and he's being priced that way, right? Giron, he's a sizable favorite against. Giron's a top 50, top 70 player. You know, Zhang, another top 50 guy. He's, again, a fairly sizable favorite. Bautista Agut, I don't know how far he's dropped, but he's a monster favorite there. He's consistently being priced in the top 20, top 30 range. One, he's not even top 50 himself. And two, a good chunk of his points have come from a late season 250 title. And like a Washington quarterfinal, where if you remember, that Washington event was the same week as the Olympics. Again, a very weak field. One of the weaker 500 fields we've seen in the last few years because it coincided with the Olympics, or at least players were getting ready for the Olympics, or they were in Paris for the Olympics. Boys and girls, like, stop giving Denis Shapovalov this kind of respect. He might win. He's got the talent to do it. We talk about it all the time. He's super talented and unreliable. If his talent shines through, we lose this bet. But once more, we are not afraid to lose bets on this show. And I think Musetti has to be bet if it's going to be a pick.
Never Chapo, John. You can get a plus 100 on Bet Online also, by the way. I would make Musetti minus 150 in this matchup, personally. So anyone you're eyeing, you want to talk about, John?
Yeah. Are we going to trust Fabi Maroszan, who is fine in 5-set matches, is, I guess, kind of a hot hand guy, if you will? And more importantly, I don't trust Tiafoe on serve. He broke down. I don't think we've ever seen him break down physically. Like, his athleticism is one of his kind of calling cards. And he just about lost to Rinderknecht. Look, Maroszan is, I don't want to say like Khacanov, because when you say that, people just be like, well, no, there's this tiny difference between them. And no, I'm talking in style, kind of slap happy, small target, able to pull off upsets, also able to go out really early. I'd like a plus 200 on the money line, if I'm being quite honest, but I don't hate, an over 38.5 look. And that seems like a big number, but keep in mind, you're talking about one of these larger favorites that does really struggle on return. Maroszan's got a big enough and aggressive enough game to exploit that. He's also a guy, as I've said, like he fits into that slap happy category. He's going to find it real tough sometimes to win matches by margin. He's going to find it, he's also going to be able to keep matches close as an underdog, right? We've gone over this. The Buyun Chouketes and the Ogiel Yassims as a favorite, or the David Fokinas as dogs, or Shapovalov is in this category. Fabi Maroszan has plenty to his game. Miomir Kecmanovic can smack the ball around, but it often loses the plot for a while. It's all too common on the ATP Tour these days because everyone's kind of modeled their game after we have to have a big game, and everyone's forgotten that we have to be intelligent people on court, part of it. And, this falls into that kind of realm. Fabi Maroszan I don't think he's the most tactically astute player. Everyone's going to talk about the drop shots. It's like, oh my God, like, we get it. Everyone knows he likes the drop shot. I don't know how important it's going to be against Tiafoe, who's, very quick and able to get into the forecourt. Perhaps if there's lingering issues that made him sick, or that heat problem or whatever it was in that last round that caused him to throw up, maybe, if you drop shot him to death, that kind of reemerges. I don't know how much that's worth in pricing this matchup. So I think the better option here is the over 38.5. The over 3.5 sets is a little juice for me. But if you do want to talk about strictly value, I do think it should be on the other side of minus 200. I do think there will be value in a 1.57 or minus 180 or whatever the hell that number is in American odds. But I think I prefer the games because, yes, you can go under 30.5 getting to 4 sets, but with the return game of Tiafoe, I'm not really expecting him to carve up Maroszan 6-2 in any given set. So, I'm looking at that over.
Maroszan got a lot of free points on serve against Sebuth Vioch in the opening round, both with his ability, but also the Brazilian was not trying on return quite a bit. So it was a little bit of both there. The Hungarian certainly did his thing to get the free points, but he cruised through a lot of service games because Thiago just didn't do anything. He just stood there. The other thing is Mara was also pretty error prone in that match. That's why I went 5 sets. All right, John, I got one to talk about. Pablo Carreno Busta taking on Ben Shelton. Shelton's a pretty massive favorite here. Maybe rightfully so. Minus 375 here. On the money line, Busta is plus 290. 5-game spread. Looks like it's actually about 5.5 for Shelton. 38.5 total here. Over on Bet Online, I get an over 3.5 sets at minus 140. This is another one. I don't know why we don't have a neutral pricing on the over 3.5 sets, which is like minus 175. I love this setup with Busta, veteran, grinder versus Shelton. We've seen this time and time again. Manarino outright beat him last year at this event. I like to set up for Busta to get a set here.
So a few things here. This is the other player I had the minus 1.5 games first set with. Did you see the movement that came against Pablo Carreño Busta last round against Kamil Myshak? A guy who's got decent pop but is nowhere near, being able to just hit through Carreño Busta. The disrespect was unbelievable. My issue is that I didn't know how he'd hold up, and I suppose that fear was a little stupid from the start because he played some really talented players throughout the lead-in tournaments, I suppose. And he played several of them close and crushed Alex Shevchenko. Shevchenko is a fringe tour-level player who he matches up really well with. We talked about that. And he crushed him. He plays well against Tsitsipas, who's still not totally incompetent, as much as he is incompetent on quicker hard courts. Kind of falls into that, return game isn't great category, like, I don't know, a Ben Shelton. Although, again, I'm not saying Ben Shelton is Tsitsipas. I don't like the lack of progression in his game, but he's far superior to Steph on quick courts, obviously. But again, you've got that little opening there with Pablito. And he was like, he didn't look physically unfit. So I had minus 1.5 sets because, again, if he's going to win that, he probably has to win that in 3 or 4. And I had the minus 1.5 sets or minus 1.5 games in the first set. Really impressed me. Even against Kamil Myshak, I thought there could be some problems in there. There weren't. I'm with you. I think there's an undervaluation on Pablo. The problem is the overs. He's a plus 300 and the over is still what? 38.5 games. That's wild to me. Consider this. What is Fabian Maroszan as a dog to Tiafoe? Tiafoe's not the greatest returner in the world. And Fabian Maroszan is under plus 200 and a 38.5 with a 38.5 total. So this is a plus 300. You'd expect that total to come down, right? The larger the dog or the larger the discrepancy between the favorite and the dog, the lower that total should be. It should be a more routine win more often than not. That's how odds work. And yet it's 38.5. The market has zero trust in Ben Shelton's return game right now. And I know he spoke about wanting to improve it. We're a couple weeks into the season. Even if he started to work on that, it's not going to bear fruit yet. And I am incredibly skeptical that he is going to improve it even by year's end. I don't trust it. I don't think that he has the patience. People love the verve and the kind of excitement and the shouting. You know what that also is to me? You know what I see that as? I think it's great. I don't mind it. I don't like it after, every little point. It's like someone celebrating a sack in football. When you're down 14 and it was a first down play and you haven't even got your offense back on the field yet. I think it's a little premature, that celebration. But I think it's good for the game. I think it's entertaining for the fans. But it also tells me that he's a very passionate player who gets caught up in the moment. And he's not thinking through every shot. He's not thinking about his next 2 or 3 shots. How often did you see Rafa burst out like that? When he won a big set, or when he won a match, or when he grinded out a match. Djokovic, same thing. The fist pump and the point to the head. Stan, the point to the head. These guys don't get worked up over small points within a match. They see the larger picture. That's the issue for Ben, for me. I think he's got to really hone in on, if he wants to improve on return, he's got to start understanding, grinding out and making an insane shot at 30 all on serve is not something to celebrate. You do not want to be at 30 all. You should not be in that long of a rally to need that shot making ability. And so for me, I think, the over is probably out of the question, but let's look at some Carreño props, maybe the plus games. I never back plus games, but we're getting 5 here. The money line looks somewhat enticing. I think there's ways to back this match, back Pablito in this match.
I like the set one money line at plus 180 here. I think we're headed toward Breakerville here in the first set. Over 10.5 plus 150, plus 220 on the set one breaker. Wouldn't be shocked. A couple more and then I gotta go. I'm tempted by Gabe Diallo against Khacanov. Tempted. Diallo was the giant slayer against Tommy Paul at the U.S. Open. 4-game spread here against Khacanov. Diallo stormed back in his opening round match against Nardi. Didn't look great for stretches. You mentioned in our chat you think he has some mental stuff going on, which I think he'll talk about. 39.5 total here. Khacanov minus 285. Khacanov took my money by winning the breaker 7-5 against Manarino in the first set, and then Manarino went full Manarino and lost pretty easily. A straight set win for Khacanov. I feel like we're going to have some breakers here. I mean, I have no real good feel for Diallo. So I am curious your thoughts on his potential live dog status here.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the yips a little bit. I think he did have them. There were 3 straight sets he blew a break lead, twice serving for them. He won the second against Nardi, and I tweeted about how important I thought that was. And it wasn't for my betting account. It was specifically done that way because I didn't want people to think, it was a betting indicator or a betting signal. It was a very small sample, but something I'd noticed, and that's why I did it from the main account. I do think there was something there where he was broken serving for the match against Sonego, lost it in a third set tiebreaker. Then he was broken in the first set from a breakup against Nardi, lost that one in a tiebreak as well, or 7-5 tiebreak. Then in the second set, he's broken again and now I'm starting to realize this is not good. Like if he loses this set, one, he's down 2 sets, and you got to think the confidence is shot. 3 straight matches on quick hard courts. I'm up a break of serve against poor returning Italians in quick conditions. And I've blown all 3 of them. To me, yeah, you've got to start considering what that can do to a young player's confidence and mentality. The fact he came out with that set was huge. I know he then lost the third, but look what happens in the fourth and fifth. I think Nardi somewhat slows down, obviously, but he just does not take his foot off the gas. And that was so good to see. Like, I'm a Canadian tennis fan, and I've lost hope in Felix and Shapo. Completely and utterly lost hope in them. And Bianca. And I don't think Layla quite has the ceiling to really be among the best in the women's game. So Diallo coming in with athleticism, decent return game, a huge serve. Like, yeah, I want to see this kid freaking win matches, man. One, I had a bet on him, sure. But two, like, he is, to me, the future of Canadian tennis. And I'm super hyped to see him do what he did. And I absolutely think he can stick with Khacanov. I know we saw Khacanov do well late last year, and I know I backed him a ton because I thought the market had overreacted in a big way and then hadn't kind of re-reacted or kind of course corrected is the proper way to say that, I suppose, when he was showing strength. And we made a lot of money backing him at the end of last year, didn't we? I believe. I'll have to go back and check my spreadsheet, but I'm pretty sure like Khacanov was nice to me last year at the end. And now he's back to being priced up as, the good old regular Karen. I think Diallo's racking up bit by bit experience in best of fives. I'm not so worried about that. I don't think the last 2 sets against Nardi were all that exerting physically. I don't know. I kind of have I'm with you on this. I like the perhaps an over because when you're looking at 39 games, 39 and a half or 40 games, sometimes you might need 5 sets in certain matchups to get to those numbers. This one feels like a matchup where 4 sets is almost destined to go over these kinds of numbers, right? You don't foresee all that many lopsided sets. You don't want to say never. Don't speak in absolutes. Everything is within the range of possibilities, within the range of outcomes, right? There are tail results that could happen within sets. But this feels like a match that doesn't have all that many of those kinds of sets involved. And once again, do you trust Khacanov to win in straights against a big server, against a very talented young player? If he wins 3-1, do you think he's going to go back and be kicking himself for not beating a very good serving up-and-coming player 3-0? I don't think so. I don't think Khachanov's going to have any problem winning in 4 if he does. I also think Gab is far more alive than the market believes. So I'll probably go with, the John Classic here, the over-dog combo. I think I like both of those numbers.
All right, let's round to the finish with Casper Ruud taking on Jakub Mensik. Ruud only minus 145 here on the money line. Mensik plus 120. 2-game spread, 39.5 total here. Big Fonseca Rublev vibes here. Do you believe in the youngster? I mean, Mensik, I feel like actually has been proving it on tour. Less of a leap than Fonseca in a 5-set format. However, as you mentioned on a previous pod, does have a bit of the Draper thing going on. Can pop up with some physical issue randomly at any given time. Are you letting this one pass? Are you hot to bet the dog here, even if it is relatively short? Man, I wish we could get at least like plus 150.
Yeah, that's, the market's done a good job. Sometimes you got to hang your hat or tip your hat, pardon me. You got to tip your cap to, the market pricing this up properly. Did the traders there's a plus 124 available at Pinnacle. Opens plus 136. I think that's close to playable, but as I said, good job by the market pricing that down to plus 120. It's never gone back up over plus 125 ish. No, yeah, I don't want anywhere near this. I think Casper Ruud, physically is going to be a real tough test for Jakub Mensik. I think Mensik's power to that, especially if he can direct it at the backhand more often than not, is going to be a real tough test for Casper Ruud. I have zero interest in playing a side in this. A total at 39 also seems correct. When you see a money line and you think it's correct, you're usually going to find most of the other markets involved in the matchup are right or priced correctly, right? Like they're generally correlated. There are some mistakes. There are some times where they do correlate them the same way, and there's a matchup tendency that might make the total, should be knocked down, but not really in this case. So, I'm going to go ahead and pass on this matchup.
All right, let's not end on a pass. John, I'm going to do it.
I have a couple.
Go ahead.
I have a couple here before we get to that. If we're talking round 2, how about James McCabe? The one concern I have with McCabe is playing a smart player and a kind of guy that can grind and still has a big serve like Michelsen. I do fear there could be some ass kicking happening in this matchup. But minus 105 to win a set, super enticing. That's at penny on the Aussie. I love him as a big underdog. I actually took some of him against Martin Landaluce last round. I took the overdog combo in the end last minute. It got from like plus 240 to plus 275. He said, can't have it. James McCabe has done right by me so much in Australia in the last few years. I like his game. I think the serve forward combo is bigger than people realize. I think he's unknown because he hasn't played enough yet at the Challenger circuit to really rack up much data on him. I do worry about playing a solid backhand, a big server, and a smart player that can grind like Michelsen, though. There is that concern. But it's a 50-50 shot to win a set. It does seem pretty harsh on the young Aussie. I do think he's got the game to stick with Michelsen for 2 or 3 sets. And, you just need to pull one of those out. I could look really stupid in a 2-6, 2-6, 2-6 loss, and I'm fine with that. I got to take McCabe minus 105 to win a set. This is one, though, the rare time where I'm probably not going to sprinkle the money line. I think winning one out of 7 times is actually pretty accurate for this contest. But I do think he plays a lot of those losses closer than the market believes. So I will go ahead and dive into the minus 2.5 sets. One of those rare times I said where you might find a little bit of where the correlation's in place that's typical, but you find it a little bit off. And that's this matchup for me.
All right, John, I have one more, and I'm getting out my clown makeup. I'm laying rakes across the floor to step on because I'm betting Christian Garin.
Oof.
All right. Okay, last time out,
Oof.
Taylor Fritz was 8.5 game favorite versus ended up 9 versus Jensen Brooksby, who's been in the witness protection program. We literally haven't seen him. Total guess on the line. Fritz easily covers. Probably should have been even higher. Garin qualified in. Eviscerated Chorich. Now he's an 8 game dog. It's 8.5 because it's coming down to 7.5 rather. But open an 8 game dog here, plus 1,200 on the money line, minus 3,300 for Fritz, 31 total here. Has anyone seen Taylor Fritz's resume and slams? He can make things way more complicated than they need to be. We have a guy who's in form, not the greatest hard quarter, not the greatest quick quarter. He's all over the place, Garin. Profiles as a pretty good tour player, though, but level, always a concern. Plus 2.5 sets, or just to win a set is plus 130. Over 3.5 is plus 145. If this was anything shorter than plus money, I would not be playing, but I like the over 3.5 here at plus 145. I do think Fritz obviously wins, but I like Garin to get a set here at a pretty substantial price, given what we've seen here late in the third. Fritz chokes it. I'm sure you disagree with this play, but
vehemently.
but I'm doing it.
So the Fritz kind of makes a meal of his Grand Slam matches. I think, let's dig into that from last year where he really took a step forward, because I don't think that's necessarily true. Casper Ruud, Stefanos Tsitsipas, Zverev, these are the guys pushing him, not he crushes Komesanya, who had just come off a couple nice wins against Stricker and Humbert. He crushes Berrettini. He crushes Ugo Carabelli on a hard court at the U.S. Open. Tiafoe, Zverev, and Ruud we're not going to give Garin credit for being anywhere near their level, right? So I don't care if he needed more than 3 sets against them. Wimbledon crushes Chris O'Connell, handles Tabilo, who was having a good year and has decent pop, which Garin I don't think has, and needs 4 sets against Rinder Kanesh in his big serve. Again, not exactly stylistically where Garin profiles. At the French Open, he had some troubles. He's on clay, and he was playing clay quarters the whole time. It's also not relevant to quick Australian hard courts. Then last year, sure, the Facundo Diaz-Acosta match. That's the one where, that would hold up to that statement. Crushes Hugo Gaston. And then needs 4 sets to beat Maroszan, but beats him by 7 games. And Maroszan, obviously, also much more talented on a hard court, on a quick court than Christian Garin. I'm not sure that holds up to scrutiny when you talk about making a meal out of matches. When you kind of then categorize his matches by quality of competition, Garin would fall into the category of guys he's handled in straight sets with regularity. The one thing I will say is Garin can look sneaky with the serve and forehand combo. He can take the forehand early. He can put that ball away in the forecourt. Taylor, not the greatest, still moving along the baseline. I would think if you want to do anything, which I don't advise, but if you want to do anything on this match, and you think the cover is in play, then play the first set to go over. Just really, really lead into the variance here. Because if he's going to cover 8, you'd think he needs a 7-5 or 7-6 set along the way, right? Or a 6-4. Something that keeps it close. You can't get it. 3-3 and 3, you're done. 4-3 and 3 is a push. 3-4-3, like all these kinds of any 6-2, you're in big trouble. Any 6-love, 6-1, 6-2, which is Fritz is more than capable of putting up against players like Garin. So lean into the variance if you want to back Garin. And I would say just go for the plus 300s on 10.5. Go for the plus 500s on the tiebreak. And then, he gets to 7-6. 1, you're done. You've got your cash. It's a much, much higher payout as well. And 2, he's going to probably need that to set himself up to cover 8 later on in the match. And he could still fall apart, lose a 6-1 and not cover the 8. So if I'm going to play Garin, I'm going to look to kind of, as I said, lean into the kind of tail outcomes where Fritz, for some reason, needs a close set. The close set could happen in the second, and that's why, that's the only argument for playing the plus 8, is it could happen in the second or third, and then you're in trouble. But I would just lean into and say, screw it. If I'm going to back an out-of-form moron or a guy who hasn't been good for a year and a half and isn't good on hard courts, I'm going to do it with, like, the highest odds I could possibly get if I'm going to follow that game script. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm not interested in the games. I'm talking the plus money on to win a set.
Okay, sets. Okay. Okay, now you're really going.
But I hear you on the ladder here. Yeah, wow. Okay. Plus 375
and if you really want to lean into that,
go ahead.
Just live bet the second and third set ladders. Just really lean into it.
I'm sticking
it's a hold your nose bet. It's a hold your nose bet. We can say that for sure.
It's not a lead pipe block, John.
No.
I'll say that. All right, John. Well, we've said it all for now. On round 2, other matches we could go over, but we have to go. If you like this podcast and you're listening for the first time, you can sign up to our new subscription service for $4.99 a month. You're going to get additional content, a bonus episode with both John and I, a solo pod from me, a solo pod from John. It's going to be less than $1 per episode by the time the month is over, and you're going to have some fun rocking with us through this Australian Open into the indoor season, through Indian Wells and beyond. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also, we are an Underdog partner. Underdog Fantasy, the best place to play fantasy sports. Use our promo code MATCHPOINT9, MATCHPOINT9, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash. They're also doing tons of fun stuff to help you win, or to give you a better shot at winning. They did the deal reveal the other day, in which you got a special stat. You can mix and match tennis, college basketball, NBA, golf, hockey. Just a lot of ways to play and win. Big money out there to be won. I'm going to start putting out some daily entries here on our timeline at MP9 Tennis. So look out for that. Follow John at Jared Sweets Tennis, at Tibbets Tennis. Follow us at MP9 Tennis. Do like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, see you in the court.